Welcome to Wildspire. You get to be a fly on the wall for my intimate conversations with entrepreneurs who are changing the world. I'm your host, Stephanie Benedetto, coach, storyteller, and unmarketer at The Awakened Business, helping coaches and change-making entrepreneurs unleash their inspired message and share it with playful unmarketing. I'll ask curious questions and explore uncharted waters with my guest today. Anything can happen when we step into the unknown of infinite creativity, and that's where we're going to play. My guest today is Coach Debby Handrich. She is one of the most animated speakers I have ever had the pleasure of speaking to. And in this vibrant and engaging conversation, we talk about the power of telling your story and being your best self. A little bit more about Coach Debby Handrich. Debby is a teacher to storytellers and memoir writers who craft books about their unique heroic journeys. She also helps adults of all ages create their next chapter in life through guided journaling, vision board parties, and life coaching. Her clients have overcome losses and addictions, while others have acquired new businesses, more wealth, and the opportunity to travel the world. She is an avid reader of contemporary short fiction, biography, 12-step recovery, spiritual laws, and personal development, with a strong desire to master the art of taking 2 long vacations to exotic destinations each and every year. It is my great privilege to introduce to you the ambassador of living your life, Debby Handrich. Hello, Debby, and welcome to Wildspire. How are you today?
I am great. How are you?
I'm well, too, and even better for being able to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So when I think about Debby, and I think about what would I love to talk about with you, I want to know, like, what's alive for you in your life right now?
What's really been alive lately has been this idea of blowing up my old business model and doing whatever the heck I want. And when I allow myself that kind of freedom, I really get into how much benefit my writers experience when we go on retreats. So I'm just envisioning, now that it's summer and I have a window that looks out to water, I'm just really envisioning how I can take people on retreats like 2 and 3 times a year.
Mm. So since we're talking, is that what you want to explore? Do you want to just talk about what it is to blow up your business, or what it would be for you to blow up your business, and what you might like to have this retreat?
Sure. All you need is a cannon, and you stick your business in it and you blow it up. No, but really, for me to blow up my business is to really ask the question, what part do I love? And everything else gets in the shredder. Everything else goes in the shredder. And when I give myself permission to do that, I just instantly feel really creative again.
So Debby, where did that permission come from?
Stephanie.
Really? Where did it come from? Because, like, I'm not your principal or your mom or dad, and, where...
It came from conversations like people like you. It came from really just getting out and exploring life, being outside and just really allowing, when a question came, to kind of nibble on it and go, I have more permission to choose in my life than I'm really exercising. And when I saw that, I thought about how much I've loved taking people on retreat. So it really just got into living life and noticing, where am I exercising my permissions and where am I just sort of repeating the days?
It's really cool. I've found that it's again and again when I have conversations with people, especially around their business for some reason, but of course, that's what I'm talking about a lot often. They don't know they have permission. Like I'll say, well, what if you did that? What if you threw this out? If you could, I'm allowed to do that? They'll say to me, like there's some kind of rule book and they've been breaking it. They'd be breaking it by doing what they want. When your business gets to look like anything, gets to be anything. I was listening to a gentleman called Derek Mason today on a call, and he was sharing his story of being in prison and finding his freedom. As he expressed it, he said, I saw that I could be anything, that this whole bag of everything I'd done in my life and all my stories about it that I've been carrying around, when I saw that I could be anything, it just fell away. And when he said it, he was seeing something about I could be anything. Said a different way, I am infinite potential. The possibilities for me in my life are infinite. The possibilities for me in my life and my business are infinite. When he said it, I knew that he was seeing this deeper or in a different way than I had seen it. Because I could tell as I listened to him that there was still a place in me where I was like, okay, yeah, infinite possibilities here, but not really infinite, like within this. He was like, no, infinite. And it was so simple the way he was expressing it that he said, I just show up in this moment and I follow the feeling of what to do. And it leads me there. It shows me the way. I don't need to have a plan. It's like, it's okay if I have a plan, but I follow in this moment. And that's kind of what I'm hearing that you're discovering about your business is that you could blow it up. You could change it completely. You could leave it behind. It could be anything. You could transform it into a rocket ship or a submarine or a feather on the wind. I don't know. What would your business be if it could be anything?
What I love is that permission allows you to see that it can be absolutely anything you want it to be. Absolutely anything you want it to be. And I work with writers who come to me with the desire to write a book, but they're doing the same thing I'm doing. They're thinking, or there's this way you write a book, there's this way. And so I've come to you, Coach Debby, to show me the way. And I can't show them the way because there is no the way. But there are many, many ways to write a book. And the most important thing is to do it their way, to discover how their brain works and to discover what they desire and discover what they want to share. And then to discover their way that's going to work for them and to coach them through it. And then I'm over here doing my business, forgetting that that's exactly how I want to run my business. So it's like we all need coaching and conversations and friendships and opportunities to go for a walk to see there's a way that holds us in the world and allows us to feel so just ourself, just our own identity. And if we don't honor that, that's the minute all of the infinite possibilities shrink away from us. We have so much permission, but we forget. I really think it's that simple. We forget.
You said that something holds us. What is that?
Just our real story of our becoming, of our desire. We're held by that. And we create it all the time. But a lot of the teachings that I offer people are based in Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. And I talk a lot about what I've sort of coined in my business the heroine's journey. And I think of it as the hero went off and did life and really got excited about some mountain she was going to take on, or some cooking class, or having a child, or anything at all. And then she had an experience. And it's the heroine that says, well, come home and sit down and let's write about that. The heroine holds that experience. The hero went out and did it. But what do you want to build now that you've been heroic in your life, whether you planned it or didn't plan it? You know, some people are heroic because they had an injury. You know, some people are heroic because they lost their love. But out of it is a huge story that a lot of people want to share. And they want to share it often for the good of others and the good of their own self. But I see it as this heroine that has the story, she's holding it, and she wants to find a way to release her hands and share it outwardly and express it in a book or a blog or a TED Talk or something. And it is in recognizing how that story is held and how you want to express it that you really step deeper into your own identity, and that your word, permission.
So how do I find that? Let's just say that I've had a life. I've had some adventures in my life. Gee, I probably have. That's true for me. I bet that's true for everyone. Something's happened. Some things that were maybe great, some things that weren't so great, maybe some things that were really hard. How do I know what story wants to be told? Like what my heroine is holding in her hands, you know?
It's one of the hardest pieces for people. It's really hard. And it can become so much simpler so quickly. So we start with seeing that most people want to tell their life story. That's hard. It's hard to chronicle your whole life. But usually there's a moment where a person changed and they didn't know they could. And there's story in that. There's a moment when a person went from having a terrible injury to recovering and understanding so much about their health now that they never knew before. Or there's story in the loss of a loved one. For myself, there was so much story in the fact that as a kid, I was so bullied. And I just, it was a day in, day out thing. In junior high school, there were 7 periods that you had to walk into 7 different classes throughout the day. And that's when it all started, 7 times a day. And what I couldn't understand then was that was going to help shape me into reaching for more. That the outer world showing me the denial of my expression would actually help the desire for my expression to get stronger and stronger. And I was partially bullied because of my coloring. I'm albino and I have very limited eyesight. But I also had a mom that just really believed that I could do anything I wanted, even though the doctors said, you know, Debbie will always be institutionalized. She'll always be legally blind. She'll never go to college. I have remained legally blind, but I have 3 college degrees. I taught college for 22 years. I did things I wanted to do because I came to understand that the bully lived outside of me, and I had the permission to keep it outside and far away as I grew older. I didn't know that as a young girl, but that was the story that came forward that wanted to be shared, was that I didn't have to give in to a bully inside of me. It could remain outside, far away, and at this point, not even really visible. I really don't have bullies anymore.
Hmm. Well, that's a really beautiful hope or promise that the thing that haunts you, whatever that is, might look like something that happened to you in the past or an experience that keeps coming up in your own life, like depression or anxiety, that it's not you, that it's actually outside of you. And you don't have to create it inside of yourself or recreate it by reliving it or bringing it with you like that baggage that we were talking about earlier. And it sounds like there's a way in telling your story, like you live it for yourself and you transmute those experiences, you change them. There's something transformational about writing it and then also sharing it, like passing it on.
Deeply so. And I think what scares people is the idea that they're going to go back into this old story and have to tread through every bit of it again. But like I was saying, it's more of that. It's that hero energy coming forward, but it's more of a heroine. It's a nurturing, holding energy of the story that just gives you permission to share what you want and leave whatever you want behind. Just don't want to share. You have permission. I love this word, that this word has become a theme here. You have permission to share what is on your mind. And there are ways to package this so it's easy for readers to follow and identify with, even though they've lived a very, very different life than perhaps you have. I think so many people, when they go through some sort of transition, especially when they didn't know would happen, there's just this high level of learning that they have a desire to give back at. And I think too, I loved this book, Into Thin Air, that John Krakauer wrote about high altitude hiking. I mean, for anyone that's done something like that, my guess is once you've done it, you don't want to just keep all this to yourself. You want to share it outwardly. And it is in that desire to do so that I think people find such an amazing permission to live their life more fully. And that's something I do too, is we write, what's the next chapter of your life? Does it include sharing this publicly? Maybe you just want to put it on paper and tuck it away because you wanted a deep sharing with yourself. But I just have felt my whole life that there's so much richness in story. And so however that's guiding my business or guiding my conversations, that's something that holds my attention any day, anytime. We all have like a theme we love. And for me, it's storytelling.
I'm moved to share something that I don't know if I've talked about it publicly, and I don't think about it often. But when I was a little girl, I was a voracious reader. It was what I did most of the time. I would tear through books. I would go to the library. I would look for every book that had interest for me in one section and then move on to the next section. And I was like just constantly reading books, hours and hours, all day long, all summer long, especially when school was out. And I think it was around the time I was 13 years old, I said to myself, when I'm old and I know something, and for me at that time, old seemed like maybe 40 years old.
Right.
When I'm old and I know something, I want to write my memoir. And I barely knew what a memoir, I knew what a memoir was because, I was a fairly smart kid. I'd probably read a memoir or two by the time I was 13, but and it just stayed with me. I said, I want to do that. And fast forward about a little over 11 years, actually, right before I was going to get married. And you ever notice how, I don't know if this happens in the stories you see, it's like when there's a transformation happening in someone's life, there's that before and after, there's that moment where they change, a whole mess of things happen in their life at the same time.
Yep.
So I was like quitting my job, getting married, and I got this invitation to join a writing group. It was run by my mentor, Steve Lewis, who I had on a previous podcast episode. He's amazing. And he invited me in. Everybody else in this writing group was like 20 years older than me. I didn't care. I really didn't care, but I also felt kind of good about myself. And I said yes. And I want to use the phrase, I was shitting my pants because I was so scared. Now I'm going to actually have to write. And I'd had feedback throughout going to school and some college classes and things that, oh yeah, Stephanie can write, whatever. But now I was making a leap to join a writing group. And one of the first pieces I shared was an essay about when my mother got married to husband number 4. I'm counting, yes, husband number 4. And he was a convict in prison, and I went to the prison wedding. And it was just written as a small standalone piece, kind of dry and like, I don't care. Like you could hear the voice of the teenager that I was, like, I don't care what my mother does. And also underneath it, like such despair and hurting. And that was a piece that I wrote that got a response out of the people I read it to. And I started just writing about my story, and it turned out that it was a memoir. And I wrote it. I wrote through it. It took me a couple years. And I thought I was going to be writing about what it was like to be my mother's daughter, because there were a lot of challenges as I saw them at the time. And that's not the book I ended up writing.
Right.
I mean, my mom was in it, and she was a main character, and my relationship with her was a part of it. Well, the book I ended up writing was actually about my relationship with God.
There you go.
And my coming into the fullness of me, like it was a coming of age kind of thing. But it was always about like me and God and making sense of this thing that's my life. And I wrote it and did a couple drafts of it actually, and got feedback, and went so far as to actually talk to a publisher at one point and got some decent feedback on it. But like, this isn't for us, you got to get the right match. And then I dropped it. And I dropped it because I think at the time I was like, I can't tell this story without hurting people in my family. And then it just was there, but I still have it.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't wanted to like pick it back up and publish it. And if I wrote it again, I don't know, my story looks so different to me now. And I wrote it in the present tense as if it was happening in the moment. So it's very young. It doesn't have the benefit of, older Stephanie's, future Stephanie's wisdom. It's like, this is what it looked like to me in the moment. And I'm not sure exactly why I'm sharing that. It just occurred to me to share because it was interesting to see that most of the time when I set out to write something, what I end up writing is not what I think, or there's something different about it. It takes me somewhere. What do you notice about that?
I have 400 things to say about all this, but I will tell you that so many times people have said, like, I want to write a memoir like you did. I want to write a memoir to share what it was like to be my mother's daughter. And in the end, what I shouldn't even say in the end, coming up to the middle, they discover, oh, I'm not really writing about what it's like to be my mother's daughter. I'm writing about what it's like to overcome alcoholism. And it's like, okay, all right, you know, and then you go from something that's wildly big to much more focused. This happens all the time. Another person I worked with had spent 18 years in jail. And he said, I want to write my story because I don't want anyone to ever make the mistakes I did. And I'm like, okay, well, we can start with this. What he wanted was to really write and show when the mentors showed up in his life, how that made massive difference, not only to him, but to his entire heritage. But first, he had to be incarcerated for 18 years because that's what all of the men in his heritage had done. They had all committed a robbery. They had all gotten caught, and they had all become incarcerated. And what he found was in being mentored during his incarceration and beyond, that he was breaking the pattern in his family, and how he would raise his sons, because he and his father and his grandfather didn't have access to such principles and such guidance, and coming back to being held, just held in life's process. They were in a deep survival mode. So that desire of what the book is going to be about often changes in the early to middle stages. And like you said, you're getting ready to write a book and everything in real life starts to fall apart. It's just sort of all the fluttering of paper shows up in your world in a fluttering of events. It's very normal. Almost everyone that gets to the middle of a book with me tells me, oh, I have to stop. You wouldn't believe what's going on in my life. And I'm like, I'm probably the only person who will believe it. So, tell me about it. At the same time, Stephanie, most everyone writing memoir is really, really conscientious about not wanting to hurt anyone, especially those really close to them. I think that's where probably pseudonyms come from. This, who's Samuel Clemens? Where do we get these names? How did Mark Twain, depart and do his great works? There's so many people. In fact, someone that I really loved growing up, when I found out how deeply she changed her name, and this is back before the internet where you could just know everything about someone. But there are so many ways that we can preserve anonymity if we want to. There really are many, many ways. But there's also that question that you were asking, which is, since it got dropped in this 1 year back there, would I pick this up, or would I try to do parts of this in a new way? And it really is about what serves you now, because this is a beautiful thing that you created here. And maybe it completely serves you to put the name, Rebecca Twist on it and send it out into the world and call it good. I don't know. But it's possible that there's something else you want to explore today around that and around the whole mission of it. And maybe you don't want it in first person or present tense. There's many things you can do, but that's the beauty of it, is understanding there's many things you could do. You just have to find one thing and do it. That's really.
You know what I actually would love to do with it?
What? Go on my retreat? No.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I always thought it would be super cool to turn it into a Black comedy.
Oh, sure.
Because there's all kinds of weird spiritual stuff and like strange, kooky things that like don't happen to people. And I could do anything. Like I could ride with that and make it into anything and create the characters or recreate the characters and change genders of people and just really let it tell the heart of the story without it being about my life necessarily. But it still is, like that. I always thought that would be great fun. And if it got turned into a Netflix series, isn't that the dream? It's like one of those things in the back of my head because I think that would be fun. But it was cool. It was cool to see a story emerge and
Oh,
see the story of my life. And my now ex-husband read it and he said, oh my God, this is like having an owner's manual to my wife. Like I get it because it was climbing inside my head.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, so hopefully that I always say I allow myself to be self-indulgent in these conversations. Hopefully it wasn't too self-indulgent in a way that's a problem. But if it was, you know what, it's not. I make up the rules for this thing, don't I?
You do. And I didn't see it as self-indulgent. I saw it as highly expressive and wonderful. And it's helping you make some decisions about, Black comedy or, there's all kinds of things to do with it. You could even call it, a roadmap for my ex-husband. you know,
That would be another story, like a story outside of the story, right? The story of, oh my God. Yeah.
there's possibilities.
So what if someone has this desire to write something, but they think their story is not good enough? Like they don't have a story. Like they didn't go to prison and they didn't have a mom who got married 6 times and they didn't have a battle with alcoholism, or they didn't have this experience of being an albino. Like they don't have a special story, but they still kind of they think they'd like to write. Like, what would you tell them?
There's a desire in people to write because this wiser part of them knows they have a special story. They're comparing it to Hollywood. It's so often that people will think, if this doesn't get me an interview with Oprah, there's absolutely no reason to begin. If this isn't on Super Soul Sunday, Super Duper Oprah time, why would I even start it? Well, you don't have a desire for something just to watch it die on the vine. There's a story in that my neighbor who rents me this little cottage I live in, she has the most amazing story, I think. She thinks it's nothing. She was a special ed teacher who grew up where she had a pool. She became a great swimmer and she taught all her special ed students how to swim. And when she tells me about these experiences that the different kids had, I am like, that is a book, that is just an incredible book. And she's just like, it's swim lessons. And I go, no, 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 no. It's not swim lessons. It's the conversations you had with someone with Down syndrome who was thinking that she was dumb. It's the conversations that you had in sign language in the pool, with the person that didn't think they would ever really express themselves. And they became a Special Olympian swimmer. You have stories. But to her, she was just living her everyday life because she knew how to swim. What's so special about that? There's a lot of special in story. There's a lot of intrigue, but because we keep them so way inside of us, we don't have the privilege of our friends going, that's a great story. You should share that. People would love that. I love that. You should share that. They think, oh, you are only saying that because you're my friend. And that's just not true. It's just not true. People are full of stories. And as soon as they start telling them, there's someone sitting across from them saying, that's a great story.
Mm. it kind of reminds me of a couple things that I used to ask this question a lot. I used to ask people, what are your superpowers? And then I'd have to explain that. It's like, what do you mean? Like, your superpowers are things that you probably don't think are superpowers. But everybody around you says, Debbie, how the hell do you do that? You make it look so easy. So your friends and your loved ones are telling you, they're pointing to your superpowers. But for you, it's so natural that you don't even notice it. You discount it. Like, that's ordinary. Nobody cares. Everybody can do that. No, sorry, they can't. There's something in that. And to me, I see that one of the greatest gifts that we have to offer, maybe it's the greatest, I haven't measured it, but it's up there, is sharing the way we see the world that's different.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
You know, how do you see the world that's really different from the way most people see it? What do you see that I miss? That I want to know about. And
Right.
there's so much in your story that combines both of those things. I don't know where it comes from, but there are somehow just certain inclinations that we develop or are born with. I don't know, maybe both. Certain ways that we see the world, certain things that come naturally, and a perspective about the world as a result of everything we experience and those inclinations and what we're taught and the things that we go through. And it's really unique and it's really different. And every single person has that. And it's different for every person. There is no person who lives in the same world because each of us sees it differently. And when I hear someone like you talk about your experience and how you see the world, and I'm really listening, it expands my own view. Because now I go, oh my God, I never thought of it like that. I never saw it that way. And it is a beautiful gift for me, just the sharing of your perspective.
Thank you. You know, everybody has it, Stephanie. Everybody, just like you were saying, has this chance, if they choose to express on the world, their world. I fell in love 11 years ago with someone who I thought was really unique. And I couldn't put my finger on why I just had never run into anyone like him before. And the longer I was in love and, you know, living in his home and the whole thing, the more I thought, we are different. We are so different. It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. Like, we are different. And then I realized there's actual words in the world that could help you understand it better. You know, he had a Navy background or a Marine background, military. The word Asperger's is in there. There's dyslexia in there. You can put all those words in there if you want. But what he is this massive mathematical, mechanical genius that can see solutions needed before we even diagnosed problems. I mean, I'm probably not explaining it very well, but he is a solution person. And when I just sit back and watch him, I'm like, wow, you know, just wow. Because my brain does not work that way. And I have tremendous appreciation for the differences in all of us peoples. And yet, sometimes I'm really glad that I love storytelling, because it can keep me out of sort of shutting down what is foreign to me. And I think those of us that know we have an inclination to express and to share and to write and talk and observe. When we know we have it, we're not unconscious to it, but we know we have it. We invite a lot of curiosity and creativity into the process. And that's where public stories are formed. They go from just being in us to being outward. They're formed. And it all comes back to this permission you were talking about in the beginning, that hopefully for most of us, there's someone or many people sitting across from us, giving us permission to really just express in the world how we want to show up. If we don't write, how we want to talk. If we don't like to talk, how we like to work in the garden, that there's people that give us permission to just be what we are, be who we are, be in the world and identify on any level that gives us real joy.
What does it do, Debbie, for someone when they really find that story that wants to be told and they tell it? How does it change them?
100% liberates a person. It's not that we all walk around chained up. It's not like that. It's that we just didn't know we could. We imposed so many rules. You know, one of the things that I hear, I taught 12,000 students in college students. So anywhere between age 16 to 60. And one thing I heard over and over again was, well, I can't spell because in the 5th grade, I flunked the spelling bee. I didn't do well. Or, well, I can't write a paragraph. And I know that's true because in the 7th grade, I got an F for it. But everybody's got this, when they want to write, they've got this point they can go back to where it all went over the edge. And it's funny to me. And it's also a little sad, but it's more funny to me that we find a way to balance on this point of failure for our whole life because we don't know any better. But if you're given the permission to tell your story, even though you got that F way back there, even though that spelling bee that nobody knows about, it's kind of a day at a time thing. But when you get to that essay that you created, that article you created, that TED Talk you drafted out, that book you wrote, and you're sending it in now to your indie self-publisher, you liberate yourself from the old way you gave it meaning to a new sense of joy. And you just come into the world the way I see you, as just this creative, curious, playful one, as opposed to, I thought it had to be done this way. I thought if I was going to publish, I had to. No, you can, you can do the traditional this ways, but most of us don't want to. We want to do it our way. We want to do it the way that our brain works. Like I was talking about my sweet one, his brain works a certain way. It serves him to do things his way. It serves me to do things my way. I don't see so well. I rely on the auditory so much. It serves me to know that and to embrace that and to not spend every day trying to see better, because it's just not going to happen. But what can happen in knowing who I am is an expression that's fully me. And by going the distance with something, doing the beginning and middle and end of an article, anything, you get to that end point and you're just free to be yourself, because that's what you were doing the whole way along. You just didn't really know it and feel it. But now you do, because that proof, that proof is right there in your hand that you did it and you're free now.
Hmm. I really feel that, Debbie, when you say it. I feel this permission to be your most audacious, vibrant, outrageous, or underwhelming, whatever it might look like to you, self. Anyway, anyhow, vibrantly alive.
So much of it is about just knowing that, especially when we think our lives are so mundane, just knowing that we're allowed to choose. We're allowed to make decisions, sharp decisions, quick decisions, change our mind decisions. These basic things. I know when I was growing up, and I had a mother that, was married a few times. To me, that was normal. Why not? Why not? He didn't work out. Well, looks like he will. Why not? She gave herself permission that no other woman I knew of her age was. Why not? In doing so, she had a lot of critics, but she got to live her way. And I think that's a beautiful thing. She wasn't out there, breaking hearts and doing craziness. She was out there living her best life. And when something didn't serve her anymore, she said it out loud, gave it a chance. And if it didn't work out, she moved right along. And I really admire her for that. I admire her for showing me what choice looks like in the uncommon. It wasn't common to make the choices she made. What decision looks like. What does it look like to change your mind because you've decided it will give you a better life than the one you have been signing up for the last 5 years? That's stuff that we all want to be proficient in. We become more proficient in when we write and we open up having a relationship with ourselves. That's what I've noticed.
Oh, yeah. In the last couple of months, I've been in this contemplation inside the Play Circle membership, but inside my own life around desire and pure intention. And I've seen that for most of my life, I've had this battle with desire, that it's wrong or bad, that certain desires in particular, which was definitely in my memoir, were not allowed, not okay. There's such an affirmation of allowing permission to desire what you want and to choose it and to change your mind and to change it again relentlessly, like as much as you want.
Right.
And I don't hear that enough. I saw that. I saw how I have lots of thoughts about desire now and what it actually means. But I've seen the power of just allowing it like any other thought created experience. And that in itself, it's like permission to be, period. Permission to have this experience that I'm having without needing it to be different. It's immediately more easeful. And I can see that in a journey of writing something that, oh my goodness, people have so many stories about their story and about expressing their story, however they choose to do it. And moving through that, your life is going to change.
It's really the first step. When someone says to me, I think I have a book in me, all I need to see is a sparkle in their eye to know if they do or not. If they're sparkling, they got a book. And the biggie is, are you willing to walk through a process of writing your book? Some people just need 90 days. Some people need half a year. Some people need a year or two. Are you willing to walk through this process and meet your new identity at the end, because you're going to change. You're going to change. Might be a little, might be a lot, but you are going to change. When you write and you get to know yourself deeper and the awarenesses come and stuff from the unconscious becomes conscious, you change. And it's going to be important to own that identity or make more changes. But no willingness for change, no book.
Interesting.
It is. Those not willing leave.
So what happens after? If this is just the first step, then what?
The next step is to make the decision to write. All right. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to observe that I'm going to go through I'm going to move along, or I'm going to move along. I'm going to move, something's going to shift here. But knowing that, I decide that I would like to step into knowing me more and writing and going through process. I decide I will step in. And at this point, it starts to become just a daily ritual with doing some journaling, following prompts, understanding that anything in book writing can be just broken down into tiny little pieces if you want it to. For me, it takes all the overwhelm out, just instantly out. But in that decision, then we start to see choices. So that willingness, the decision, and then working with your choices allows you to start to feel that liberation we talked about at the end point, but you're starting to feel it. And you're starting to get kind of savvy that this would be a great thing to keep and even expand and even let someone see, So really, that takes a person a little bit into the journey, but no willingness, seriously, no book.
How do I know if I'm willing?
When I say to you, would you enjoy the fact that as you write this book, new things about Stephanie are going to come forward and you will change? How does that sound to you? If your response is, oh no, I'm not doing that, or oh no, that sounds scary, or whoop, because that happens. People just disappear off of Zoom, they're gone. You can feel it in your gut. Your gut will always lead you to the truth of now. If right now you don't feel willing, that's okay. If you don't feel willing right now, there's no book right now. You might feel willing in 6 months. You might feel willing in 6 days. You might feel willing in 6 years. But there's nothing wrong with the person not willing. They're just not going to get what they came for. That's all. If you're not willing to pay for those Levi's, they're not leaving the store. It's kind of like that.
There's no nonsense happening here.
Right? I mean, it's a basic principle. So we got to start there.
This reminds me of the vampire problem in philosophy. So there's this thought experiment, this question that, let's say a vampire comes to you and says, Debbie, you want to be a vampire. This is amazing, amazing. I am having the time of my life. And guess what? You don't have to kill anybody. You don't even have to drink blood. You get to live forever. You're pretty much invincible. All your problems are solved. Come, join me. So he's taken out, this vampire's taken out all the bad things about being a vampire, but how do you decide if you want to be a vampire when you've never been one? You can't trust the vampire's point of view because the vampire isn't a human anymore and doesn't know, like thinks like a vampire now, right? How could you possibly know whether you want to say yes or no? You have no frame of reference for that. And it's something that whenever we're at the threshold of something that's going to change our life, like writing a book or getting married or having a child or pretty much anything, we're not going to be the same person when we do this thing than we were before. And we can't know because we've never been that person if we would actually want to be that. So the whole question in philosophy is like, you don't answer it. You just keep talking about it and exploring it, right? But I heard a discussion of this, and what I loved that I heard, and this was something I heard from me that stayed with me, is that you can ask yourself, all right, so you don't know what it's going to be like to be that person. Do I want to find out who I become? Do I want to see? And if you get a yes, you got a yes.
That's right. That's right. Joseph Campbell calls it following your joy. You know, if you're feeling some joy inside of you, just thinking about your book coming to life, it behooves you to follow that. You know, I remember the first time I left the country and traveled. I took my little brother. I was 34. And at the time I thought, I'm 34. I can do anything. But now I look back, I'm like, oh my God, I was this little baby. I was 34 years old, you know, and I took my 29-year-old brother to a country where we didn't speak the language. But I wanted to go. I wanted to go. And I didn't want to go alone. And there were all these things I knew that once we get there, we'll just have to figure it out. But I also had and once we get there, we'll figure it out. So there was both. There was the both of, once we get there and once we get there. And when once we get there is, you feel it, it's just kind of up to you to say, yes, I feel this. You know, it's like falling in love. You've been married. I've been married. You're no longer married. I'm no longer married. Well, the reasons I got married and the reasons I stopped being married were very different. But the love didn't change. The joy didn't change. That man brought me incredible joy, dating, married, and after. But the whole, are you going to marry him, was, I want to follow this. And I am so glad I did, even though there were some hard things that led to us deciding not to stay married. There were some real hard things. But do I go back and go, I shouldn't have got married? That was dumb. I don't know what I was thinking. I know what I was thinking. I was following my joy, and it took me to joy. Lots and lots of joy, and lots of new things develop, because that's how time works. We develop, we change over time. We have new ideas over time. And sometimes people enter to write a book and they get 2/3 of the way in there and they're like, you know what? Something's happened. I have changed. I don't think I do want to publish this, but I'm kind of liking the change. Could we stop here for a while? And that's fine. You know, that's fine, because that's following your joy. That whole relationship with writing your book to the 2/3 part took you into the new identity. And you got there by following your joy. It's very different if you crawled under a rock and went, oh my God, what am I doing? So, and sometimes that happens. God knows I've done it on my own writing journey. but I had mentors that pulled me out from under the rock, and I do it for my people too. So honestly, it's just like what you said. We could philosophize, philosophize, is that the word? I don't know if that's the word, but we could do that until the end of time. Or we could just really check in and go, I'm feeling some joy around this. I'm feeling a little, but I'm feeling some joy, but I'm feeling some, and that's what you want to follow.
Mm. Beautiful. So Debbie, if people want to find out more about what you do, where's the best place they can go?
I think you should come to my radio show. It's out of Seattle, Washington, but you can listen to it anywhere. There's an app. You could listen to it practically from the moon. It's it's on KKNW, and it's called Story U. It's capital U, Story U, Talk Radio. And the website for that is 1150kknw.com, 1150kknw.com. And it'll show you that on Thursdays, 4 o'clock Pacific, I'm always there. I'm always live. I'm always taking people's questions. And we do just like this. We go deep on what is it like to share your story, to have a writing business. Some people call in about writing businesses. Some people want to talk about, how do I talk to my kids? How do I talk to my wife? How do I become more articulate? How do I honor my journey? There's all kinds of things that people want to talk about, and we do it right there. We do live coaching right there. A lot of people write in. I also have a website. Right now, we're in the month of July, and every July I take some of the pages down and we reconstruct and put them back up. But there's at least 2 pages on the website there right now. And so that's CoachDebby.com, and Debbie is Debby, CoachDebby.com. And those might be 2 of the best places. There's a page on my website called Connect, and anytime someone clicks on Connect, it gives you a form where you can send a little note or a letter or pictures or anything you want. And I always reply. Nobody but me reads that. So I'd love to keep up the conversation.
Very cool. I will link to those below this on the blog page and on YouTube, so that people can find you easily as well. Thank you so much, Debbie. This has been a beautiful conversation.
Really, really fun. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me for today's Wildspire conversation. If you'd like to receive a weekly Wildspire email from me filled with inspiring stories, unmarketing experiments, tips for playing your way to impact and income without the hustle and hype, insights from my spiritual business journey, and more, go to theawakenedbusiness.com/Wildspire. Until next time, may you know yourself as the gorgeous wild creation you are.